Chapter 431. Destruction. Dealing with living things, the slaughter sword intent would be enough. Against inanimate objects, the destruction sword intent would be more suitable. The slaughter was to kill living things, while the destruction was to destroy everything, including everything. Throwing out a sword attack, the destruction chi spread out. Under this sword attack, the mental power net was like snow in the spring, melting away. The plants around it withered instantly, as if they had been through hundreds of years. A noise was heard from deep inside the rainforest. Soon, an invisible mental power spear was shot out towards Yi Chen at an unimaginable speed. It went through a huge tree on its way, which did not wither or break. However, that area seemed to have lost a huge amount of substance, turning into powder and collapsing down. However, the speed of the mental power spear did not slow down at all. Facing this, Yi Chen took a turn and held the destruction sword with both of his hands, waving it out easily. Swoosh! The invisible sword light made the rainforest lose its color, as if the colorful world had turned into a black and white one. The sword light sliced through the mental power spear, cutting it into two. More. Sensing his opponent's movement with his soul power, Yi Chen jumped up into the air. After stepping over a couple of huge trees, he threw out a sword attack. This sword attack contained no longer the destruction sword intent, but the immortal sword intent that Yi Chen was good at. As the immortal sword intent condensed into a shapeless sword light, the color in the sky and the earth recovered instantly. The surging mental power seemed to have crushed out all the way, which was even more horrifying than the destruction sword intent. After the destruction came loneliness, and after the immortal sword intent came eternity. That underground human warrior screamed out a couple of times and crazily pushed his mind power, building out layers of mental power defense in front of him. Even then, he was still worried, so he created a thick mental power armor on his body and a mental power shield in his hand. Boom! A horrifying sound came up from the bottom of everyone's heart. The immortal sword light was like a hot knife through butter, cutting through layers of mental power defense and shattering the shield. Eventually, it landed on the mental power armor. The mental power armor kept on repairing itself, but the immortal sword light was like a parasite that would not stop until it reached its target. Its power seemed to be endless as well, crazily tearing apart the mental power armor. Eventually, the mental power armor was shattered, and the immortal sword light rushed into the opponent's soul ocean. Ah! The man let out a blood-curdling scream and fell to the ground without making a sound. His originally robust muscles had completely lost their luster, like dead rotten wood. The rest of the underground humans were stunned. The person who had died was the leader of their team. His will was powerful, and he could be ranked in the top 20 in his race. He could fight 100 people by himself. They never thought that he would die at the hands of an outsider. That outsider made them feel a trace of fear. With a swing of his sword, the outsider had completely destroyed the leader's will defense, and even his soul had been destroyed. The next moment, there was a lot of noise. The underground humans communicated urgently in a language that Yi Chen and the others could not understand. The communication did not last long. In fact, it only took a few blinks of the eye. After the communication, the underground humans retreated in unison, along with the giant dogs with sharp claws and teeth. At least you have some self-awareness. The Yin demon ancestor did not see the battle between Yi Chen and the leader of the subterranean humans, and a cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Master Jade River said, "I didn't expect to see another cultivation civilization in the underground world. I wonder if it's a good thing or a bad thing." The Yin demon ancestors said, "No matter if it's a good thing or a bad thing, as long as they get in my way, they all have to die." Master Jade River chuckled and glanced at Yi Chen. Although he did not see the battle between Yi Chen and the leader of the subterranean humans, his instinct told him that the retreat of the subterranean humans should have something to do with Yi Chen. This made him quite curious about Yi Chen, since an astral-reaching realm warrior was actually able to force the subterranean humans to retreat. No matter what method he used, he should not be underestimated. After a huge battle, there were only 70 people left. Among them, there were 20 people who were wounded, with varying degrees of injuries. Bastard! I did not expect that I, old Lou, would be wounded by a dog one day. How is this still a dog? It is obviously an ancient hunting dog that can help humans hunt beasts and kill large beasts. Let's get out of here quickly. Who knows if they will come back or not. After a huge battle, the surroundings were in ruins, and the smell of blood was extremely heavy, which could easily attract the nearby beasts. The group could not take it anymore, so they left behind dozens of corpses and headed in a certain direction. No one knew how big the rainforest was. There was no sunlight or sky above, and no end in front of them. There was only endless heat and horrifying mosquitoes. The group maintained a constant speed as they opened up a small path in the rainforest. While passing by a huge branch, a poisonous snake disguised as a green leaf attacked Yichin viciously. Its body curled up like a green lightning, its sharp fangs aimed at Yichen's main artery on his neck, trying to bite him. Pap! Without even looking, Yichen lifted up his right hand and flicked his finger, cutting off the snake's head. Look! There is light in front of us. We are out of the rainforest. The astral reaching realm warrior who was leading the way was overjoyed as he turned his head and yelled. Hearing him, everyone felt a lot more relaxed, and a smile appeared on their faces. Walking out of the rainforest, they were greeted by a large lake. The color of the lake was not simple green or turquoise. Instead, it was a dreamy rainbow color. Under the dim light, everyone felt as if they had arrived in a magical world. There were some birds playing on the lake, looking very peaceful. Let's row there. Someone suggested. Yeah, I think it would be great too. The three sides of the lake were still surrounded by the rainforest, and only the end in front of them could not be seen. But of course, everyone was more inclined to think that it was not the rainforest. They started to cut down the wood and build the boat. Everyone had their favorite boat, and the one Yichen and Murong Qingcheng had made was very simple. It was just a simple rectangle, but it was a huge one, 40 meters long and 15 meters wide. The bottom layer was very thick, and the 5 layers were stacked on top of each other to make it as sturdy as possible. What wrapped around the wood were the unique vines of the rainforest. These vines had lived for countless years, and were extremely tough. Normal astral reaching realm warriors would not be able to cut it in one attack, and would only be able to leave scratches on it. After the ship was built, Yichen built 4 paddle stands on top of it, and there were 8 paddles, each of which was 20 meters long. The thickest part of the paddles had been cut into a flat shape, which was 3 meters wide. It looked like the paddles for giants. The lake looks calm and peaceful, but no one knows what kind of danger might occur. It would be best to prepare some small boats. Seeing some people couldn't wait to set out, Yichen was not impatient at all. He liked to do things without any mistakes. Even if there was danger, he would have a backup plan. Regarding this, Murong Qingcheng didn't have any doubts. After the boats were built, they were placed in their storage rings. Soon, the two boarded the boat. Each of them held a paddle and started to paddle in the water, making the boat move slowly towards the front of the lake. When they passed by some strange birds, they didn't seem to panic at all. Instead, they flapped their wings and tried to keep a distance from the boat. While no one knew what was going on, a huge bird disappeared from the lake without making a single splash. Gradually, the boat moved further and further away, and the rainforest behind them could no longer be seen. There is a holy snake from the wavy saint race in the lake. Some of them are going to die. A group of people walked out of the rainforest slowly. The leader had white hair and a muscular body. His tanned body was covered in white fur, and the white bone necklace around his neck was huge. Each of them was no smaller than a child's skull. He moved his mouth, saying something that normal people couldn't understand. Someone next to him laughed evilly. The wavy saint race likes the sacred sacrifice. They will be great offerings. The leader shook his head. As more and more ancient ruins have been discovered, more and more outsiders have entered the underground. This is the third time in the past 10 years. The previous time, which was a year ago, the billowing sacred clan lost a saintess. That's why we, the Greenwood Sacred Clan, have decided to hunt down all outsiders. Third Master, you are talking about Serenity, right? She is indeed a beauty. Unfortunately, that outsider pretty boy took advantage of her. I don't know what kind of evil spell he used to win Serenity's heart, and brought her out of here. The young generation of the wavy saint race really hates outsiders. Don't look down on the young generation of the outside world. Although their training is different from ours, because of their large numbers, there will always be a king among them. Yes. Let's go. The leader's eyes were gloomy as he glanced at Yi Chen from dozens of li away, then turned around and entered the rainforest. The lake was endless, looking like a dream. Hearing the sound of the waves, Yi Chen did not stop paddling. On the left side of the boat, a black light flashed through Murong Qingqing's eyes. She said lightly, "We have been targeted by something. It must be a snake." Yi Chen answered. Swoosh. Just as Yi Chen finished speaking, the boat in the front was attacked. 100-meter-long black snake jumped out of the water, opened its mouth, and swallowed an astral-reaching realm warrior. A lot of people with good eyesight could clearly see that the snake had a long beard, which looked like the legendary dragon whiskers. Swoosh. 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 There was more than one black snake with a dragon whisker. They kept jumping out of the water, taking away the people on the boat. Here it comes. Murong Qingqing put down the paddle and raised her arm, grabbing onto a snake that had just jumped out of the water. She then spun her body, sending this huge snake flying miles away, bringing up a huge splash. Dong! All of a sudden, Murong Qingqing's body shook, and the boat under her feet was blown into the air. Let me take care of it. Yi Chen jumped down, his left hand grabbing onto the edge of the boat. His body was hanging in the air, while his right hand held the destruction sword and threw out a sword attack, cutting towards an even bigger black snake. The black snake's scales were extremely hard, but Yi Chen's slaughter sword intent was aimed at creatures with flesh and blood. The snake had a sword mark that went through its whole body, dyeing the surface of the lake red. Chapter 432. Feeling the pain, the snake lost all of its power and started to dive into the lake. Meanwhile, the boat had also lost its balance and started to fall from the sky. Right then, another snake broke out of the water and waved its tail. Seeing that the huge boat was about to be cut in half, Yi Chen reacted quickly and used his left hand to slap the boat away. Boom! Yi Chen and the boat separated, and the snake's tail went through the gap between them, bringing up huge waves on the surface of the lake. Pap! 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 Taking a deep breath, Yi Chen lightly stepped on the surface of the lake. He twisted his feet, and a swirling power supported him as he started to run at a fast speed. The destruction sword in his hand sliced across the surface of the water. The swirling power under his feet increased drastically as Yi Chen jumped into the air and landed a solid sword attack on the snake's neck. Shoo! 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 In the next second, blood splashed out like a heavy rain. The snake had tried to go for wool and come home shorn. Its huge head that was like a carriage had been sliced off, and the cut was smooth and clean. Although Yi Chen looked so relaxed, it did not mean that everyone else was. Besides the 12 Sea of Souls realm warriors, the rest of them were in a bad shape. Their boats had either been flipped over by the snake or dragged into the water. No one knew if they were still alive or dead. All of a sudden, a huge area of the lake turned dark red, filled with the smell of blood. Take care of yourselves. In here, you guys can die very easily, just like rabbits that could be killed at any second. It was a Sea of Souls realm warrior who had been in the underground world for a couple of days. Without their Jin Yuan, everyone's battling power had decreased drastically. However, up until now, not a single Sea of Souls realm warrior had died, which made him think that there was nothing in the underground world that could threaten him. While he was feeling relaxed, he could not help but tease those astral-reaching realm warriors who were risking their lives. Hearing him, some of them made a face. What's so special about it? This underground world is only the tip of the iceberg for us. Who knows how big it is and how dangerous it is? Ah! However, what he said is not wrong. Up there, we can't say that we can get whatever we want, but we are not an existence that can be killed at will. I didn't expect that in the underground world, with our Zhenyu unrestricted, we are so vulnerable. Even a mosquito or a python can kill us. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have joined in the fun. What's the point of saying all this? The most important thing is how to leave. Voila! Amidst the chaotic battle, a 300 meters long python suddenly emerged from the bottom of the lake. Rather than calling it a python, it was more like a giant loach. It had dorsal fins from its head to its tail, and its tail was like a dragon's tail. The dragon whiskers by its cheeks were crystal white, and they were 50 to 60 meters long. When it opened its mouth, its dense teeth were completely different from a python's. When it flicked its red tongue, 3 to 4 people were sucked in, including the almighty spiritualist. No! He reacted and slapped his opponent's head. However, this ferocious python, which had lived for countless years, had extremely strong defenses. The palm strike that contained Martial will merely caused its head to tilt slightly, and it did not suffer any damage. Instead, it became increasingly infuriated and swallowed its prey. Run! Everyone snapped out of their shock and rowed with all their might towards the other end of the lake. After swallowing 3 to 4 people, that ferocious python was still not satisfied. It chased after them with the other pythons, flipping over a boat and eating the astral-reaching realm warriors on it. Master Jade River could not stand it anymore, so he stood at the back of the boat and performed another profound sense martial art that he had created himself. Great Jade Cut. Under the guidance of Fang Xingzhan's martial will, several tens of streams of water flew out from the lake. These streams of water condensed into thin rope-like blades that interweaved with each other like a huge net, encompassing toward the numerous pythons and that huge ferocious python. Shoo! 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 The master-level martial will was extremely powerful, and with the support of the water stream blades, its power was released to the extreme. Besides the fierce python that looked like a loach, the rest of the pythons that were covered were all torn apart. None of them could fight against it at all. However, the fierce python was not having it easy either, as a huge net of cuts appeared on its body. Blood kept pouring out of it, dyeing a huge part of the lake red. Yin Demon Cut. The Yin Demon Master had also attacked. He twisted his arm, and a curved blade shot out. The edge of the blade cracked on its own, turning into a tooth-like shape. It sliced through the wound of that fierce python. Swoosh! Blood gushed out like a waterfall in a jagged pattern. The upper half of the fierce python slid down diagonally, dying a violent death in an instant. Master-level warriors are indeed powerful. They are still so powerful even without Jin Yuan. Everyone who had noticed this scene was shocked. They now had a new understanding of master-level warriors. The lake was not that huge, but without Jin Yuan, they had not reached the end of it even after a week. The lake was still so far away. On a piece of land, a lake was connected to a long river in the middle of the land. The long river divided many unique and wild buildings into two. At the riverside, a young man with golden fur was squatting there, his palm brushing the python's head. There are outsiders coming this way. There are 70 of them, and you have killed 20 of them. 2 of them are very powerful, having killed the Holy Snake Master. The teenager squinted his eyes and patted the python's head, letting it dive back into the river. He then stood up and said coldly, "With me, the Goldwind Saint Sun, here, not a single outsider will be able to leave this place alive. They will all die." As the Saint Son of the Billowing Saint tribe, his power could be ranked in the top 10. Serenity, who had been kidnapped a year ago, was his sworn sister. She was supposed to be married to a more powerful saint son of the saint tribe. But, who would have thought that something like this would happen? If I am not mistaken, those two powerful outsiders should be master-level Sea of Souls realm warriors. Then, I will bring 2 priest elders over. Turning around, he walked toward the tallest building. Another 3 days had passed, and everyone finally saw the land. There were mountains and rivers on the land, which was no different from the outside world. The only difference was that the sky was always dark, and what was shining down from the gray clouds was not sunlight. Instead, it was a kind of light that was full of texture. Dong! The boat reached the shore, and the remaining 50 people jumped down one after another. What is this place? Why does it look a bit strange? Everything in the underground world is not right. What do you expect? After crossing the beach, a forest appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The forest seemed to have gone through countless battles, as the ground was full of holes. Trees had fallen one after another, and some places were even more horrifying than the quicksand. Everyone saw a small snake sink into the ground and never come out again. Carefully entering the forest, everyone did not even have the time to let out a breath before they heard 3 to 4 explosive sounds. 5 astral-reaching realm warriors were blown dozens of meters away like broken sacks, bleeding from every orifice. They died in an extremely sullen way. It's a trap. Yi Chen frowned. Murong Qingqing said, judging from the vibration just now, it should be a mental power explosion trap. I did not expect the people in this world to have already developed mental power to this level. We have just escaped from the tiger's mouth, and now we have run into a pack of wolves. We can only fight. Being treated as prey by the underground humans would not feel good at all. If they wanted to survive, they would have to fight. Everything else was just empty and unrealistic. On a high slope in front of them, a group of people appeared. The leader was a majestic young man with wide shoulders and a small head. His body was covered in luxurious golden fur, and there was a strange tattoo on his exposed chest, giving off a powerful aura. On both sides of him stood 2 white-haired old men. They also had tattoos on their faces, and their eyes were very sharp. Outsiders, you will die. The majestic young man spoke in a broken human language, which sounded a bit awkward. Old Man Sky Eagle laughed, he can actually speak our language. Although he only knows a few words, there must have been someone who came down before us. Master Jade River nodded, since the underground world exists, it must have communicated with the outside world. It is not strange at all. The majestic young man was indeed Goldwind's saint son. His gaze swept through the crowd, pausing on Yin Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River for a while. Then, it landed on Yi Chen. He seemed to feel that Yi Chen was not simple. He sneered, and disdain flashed in his eyes. Finally, his gaze shifted to Murong Qingqing. Breathing slightly hurried, Goldwind's saint son said to the priest elder beside him, I want this woman. Don't kill her. Saint son's eyesight is not bad. This outsider woman has a good temperament, perhaps even above the saintess. The priest elder on the left grinned. The priest elder on the right said, why don't we bring her back to be our saintess? Today, I want her. As for the others, I will kill them all. Goldwind's saint son's eyes flickered with intense desire and killing intent. He raised his hand high and waved it down. Although the crowd did not know what he was talking about, they could tell from his eyes and actions that things would not end well. Damn, they all treat us as prey. Do they really think we are easy to bully? Slaughter them all. Kill. There was no need for any provocation. Including Yi Chen, everyone's heart was filled with killing intent, and their eyes gradually turned scarlet red. Swish 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 swish, the first to attack were Goldwind's saint son's group. Their weapons were spears that could be thrown. Under the support of their thoughts, the spears pierced through the air at a speed that surpassed the speed of sound, tearing apart the air and covering everyone. Go back. anger flickered on demon ancestor's face. With a wave of his palm, his master-grade martial will gushed out. Pang! Suddenly, the priest elder on the left side of Goldwind Saint's son made his move. A mental hammer smashed through demon ancestor's martial will, making it impossible for him to block the spear. The next moment, 3 or 4 astral-reaching experts couldn't dodge in time and were sent flying by the spears. Ding 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 ding, the bright sword light danced in the air, bouncing off at least 1/4 of the spears. Behind the sword light was Yi Chen, who was dressed in blue. Right then, he did not plan to hold back much of his power. If he continued to be killed like this, everyone would be killed, which was why this scene had happened. Chapter 433. Oh. Interesting. He was actually concealing a part of his strength. Goldwind Saint's son distinguished his strength based on what he had seen and heard. For example, when Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River joined hands to kill Elder Sacred Snake, this scene was seen by the Messenger Sacred Snake, who informed him. As for Yi Chen, he was merely equivalent to an ordinary Sea of Soul Realm expert and wasn't particularly outstanding. Now that he had erupted, his strength had doubled. It was impossible for him not to attract attention. Glancing left and right, Goldwind Saint's son said, "I'll leave the 2 who killed Elder Sacred Snake to you. There should be no problem, right? Saint's son, rest assured. I, Sang Qing, will make sure they never return." The priest elder on the left revealed a sneer. Goldwind Saint's son was the saint son of the Billowing Saint tribe. His talent and perception were impeccable, and his potential was huge. Therefore, although he wasn't weaker than Goldwind Saint's son in terms of strength, his status was much lower. In the tribe, the saint's son and saint daughter were only below the patriarch, and their status was extremely high. I, Bayan, will certainly kill them. The priest elder on the right closely stared at Master Jade River. Goldwind Saint's son nodded, "Very well, make your move." Hearing these words, the priest elder named Sang Qing pounced toward Demon Ancestor. With a thought, an incorporeal consciousness armor condensed on his body. In his left hand was a shield flickering with a silver light, while in his right was a 3-pointed, double-edged spear. Although subterranean humans didn't cultivate Jin Yuan, because they cultivated body-tempering techniques, their physiques were formidable. Their movements were as fast as thunder, as if an ancient mammoth was charging at the enemy at full speed. Courting death. Demon Ancestor's right hand tightened, and a 4-foot-long curved blade appeared in his hand. The curved blade had a thick back and a thin edge. With a wave of Demon Ancestor's right hand, a cold light flickered, and the air was immediately sliced open. Ding! The 2 exchanged blows for the first time, and they were evenly matched. Your opponent is me. Seeing that Sang Qing and the Demon Ancestor had started fighting, Bayan was unwilling to fall behind. His hands danced like a net, creating many afterimages. In the next moment, the sky-covering intent net enveloped the Jade River Spirit Master, layer after layer. The Jade River Master narrowed his eyes and activated the Great Jade Spiral, which was propelled by his martial will. He protected himself in the center and allowed the net of will to envelop him. As for the others, they had been fighting for a long time. However, in comparison, the underground humans still had the absolute advantage. In terms of long-range attacks, the underground humans' mental power was the deciding factor. The long spears they threw out could easily pierce through the bodies of astral-reaching realm warriors. In close-range battles, the underground humans' physical strength was not something astral-reaching realm warriors could compete with. They were like beasts in human form, extremely powerful. However, the people from the outside world were not completely useless. In terms of battling techniques, the underground humans could not even catch up to them. The 2 were not even on the same level. Murong Qingqing's opponents were 3 underground humans. These 3 people were different from the other underground humans. They weren't in a hurry to take Murong Qingqing's life. It seemed that they had some plans. Ever since Murong Qingcheng condensed the embryonic form of her martial soul, she could already use her martial will to enhance all aspects of her qualities. However, when faced with the intangible will, she couldn't end the battle quickly. To be able to die by my hands is your honor. Goldwind Saint's son walked toward Yuqin step by step, his expression extremely relaxed. As far as he was concerned, personally dealing with Yuqin was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. However, since he had nothing better to do, why not have some fun? Yuqin couldn't understand his opponent's words, but it didn't mean he couldn't see his opponent's contempt. He stood in place without moving, his back straight like a sword about to be unsheathed. The sharp aura of a sword artist pervaded the surroundings. Goldwind Saint's son sneered and suddenly raised his hand. Puchi. An incorporeal will blade brushed past Yuqin's neck, leaving behind a 100-meter-long scar on the ground. As for why it didn't hit, it wasn't because Goldwind Saint's son was lenient, but because Yuqin tilted his head at the crucial moment, narrowly avoiding the attack. Not bad. Goldwind Saint's son curled his lips. You take a sword attack from me as well. Yuqin didn't care if his opponent could understand him or not. The destruction sword was unsheathed instantly, and he slashed upwards, causing a bright sword light. Boom! Goldwind Saint's son had underestimated Yuqin in the end. He didn't expect Yuqin's sword attack to be so fast and unexpected. Without enough time to dodge, he could only arrange an indestructible will barrier in front of him, which was then quickly thickened and widened. The invisible sword light condensed from the destruction sword intent clashed with the will barrier, causing the ground to crack and crack. The surrounding trees cracked into pieces, turning into ashes. Goldwind Saint's son himself was caught off guard and had to back out dozens of steps before he could neutralize the impact of the sword intent. Swinging his palm, he glanced at his left shoulder, where a piece of golden fur had been shaved off. Bits of hair were fluttering in the air, and his face looked terrible. Very well, you've finally piqued my interest. I wonder how you're going to block this next attack. Goldwind Saint's son's expression turned serious. Yuqin wasn't as easy to take care of as he had imagined. Of course, he still hadn't considered Yuqin as a formidable opponent. He was just a bit more serious. Metal Storm. Goldwind Saint's son opened his mouth and shouted. The air in front of him was immediately expelled, and countless will blades shot out like a torrential storm without any pattern. Clang! 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 Yuqin shattered the will blades one after another. Because of his fast sword speed, it seemed like he had only attacked 3 or 4 times. In fact, he had attacked at least 17 times, and each sword attack would cut apart a straight line of will blades. Bastard, die for me. The ground under his feet collapsed. Goldwind Saint's son took a step forward, and as he did so, more will blades were formed. With a single point as the center, they started to spin crazily, creating a horizontal tornado made of will blades. The tornado had a cone-shaped tip, attacking towards Yuqin at a high speed. Sky Thunder Cut. Holding the destruction sword with both hands, Yuqin used his destruction sword intent to push out his best and sharpest attack, the Sky Thunder Cut. With a single sword attack, it seemed like the world was being torn apart. The tornado made of will blades was split into 2, causing Goldwind Saint's son's attack to fail on the verge of success. Impossible. How can his sword intent be so powerful? Goldwind Saint's son's expression finally changed. In the Billowing Saint clan, he had condensed his martial spirit a year ago. Once his martial spirit was formed, his will was equivalent to a Sea of Soul realm expert in the outside world. Moreover, after the will was transformed into will, its offensive power would increase by several folds. It was definitely not inferior to a master-level martial will. If Yuqin could block his full power attack, wouldn't it mean that his sword intent was at the master level? To have a master-level sword intent in his 20s was simply unimaginable. At least in the history of the underground world, such a person had rarely appeared. Chapter 434. Due to the huge commotion caused by their battle, Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River both noticed this scene. Their expressions were astonished at first, then turned profound. No one knew what they were thinking. Taoist Ironwood and Old Man Sky Eagle were also astonished. Although they knew that Yi Chen wasn't an ordinary astral reaching expert, and seemed to have condensed a sword soul, they didn't expect his sword intent to reach such a level. Could it be that his talent in willpower was a peerless genius that appeared once in 10,000 years? Like the ancient Sword King, his sword Dao aptitude was blessed by the heavens, and he was favored by the heavens? Are you serious? We actually have a true dragon-grade genius among us. If this news were to spread, it would raise a huge commotion. True dragon-grade genius? Isn't this overestimating him a bit too much? Absolutely not. As an astral-reaching expert, he has a master-grade sword intent. If you say he isn't a true dragon-grade genius, I wouldn't believe it even if you beat me to death. Yeah, he's indeed worthy of being called a true dragon-grade genius. In the entire southern sector, there are no more than 5 people who can be called true dragon-grade geniuses. Among them, 2 barely qualify, and can only be considered as true dragon-grade geniuses. Despite the intense battle, the Sea of Soul Realm experts were still chatting. The shock brought by Yi Chen was too great. It should be known that in a certain sector, peak geniuses were the peak geniuses, and their number was around 5. But in a sector, peak geniuses weren't enough. After all, a sector had around 5 peak geniuses, and in 8 or 9 sectors, there would be 40 or 50 of them. It was simply too much, and couldn't reflect their rarity. Therefore, peak geniuses were also divided into different levels. The first level was for ordinary peak geniuses. Needless to say, only geniuses with extremely high aptitude in all aspects could enter this list. Strength was not the only criterion. The second level was for true dragon-grade geniuses. The so-called true dragon had to have the potential to attack life and death realm. As for how to judge them, it was actually quite simple. Apart from reaching the peak level in all aspects, they also had to have a world-shaking ability. For example, Yi Chen had a master-grade sword intent at astral reaching realm, which was enough to shock the world. Even if you have a master-grade sword intent, I'll still crush you. Goldwind Saint's son roared and spread his arms, seeming as if he was hugging an incorporeal ball. Then, he fiercely attacked Yi Chen. Kacha! The ground was plowed with a curved semicircle mark. This mark was formed so quickly that it seemed to have been formed abruptly without any warning. At that moment, Yi Chen and the people around Yi Chen all felt as if time had stagnated, as if space had been frozen. The mental attack from Goldwind Saint's son had slowed down their thinking. High-density thoughts. Yi Chen's heart tightened. The strength of Goldwind Saint's son was truly not to be underestimated. If this thought attack landed, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. But that doesn't mean it has no weaknesses. His willpower was condensed into a ball, which had the most destructive power. But, it was also because it was a ball that it could not be perfectly executed. Pushing his soul power to its limit, Yi Chen threw out a sword attack at the weakest point of the ball-shaped willpower, which was the most unstable and imperfect place. Pop! The sphere of consciousness dissipated and blasted a large pit. Goldwind Saint's son's extraordinary strike did not pose much of a threat to Yi Chen. It was like a thunder roaring but a raindrop falling. Seeing that the first strike was effective, Yi Chen took a step forward and slashed out a second time before Goldwind Saint's son could. Puff! Spurting out a mouthful of blood, Goldwind Saint's son flew back with a pale face. Saint's son. Sang Qing and Bayan were shocked. They were very clear about Goldwind Saint's son's strength. He was definitely not weaker than them, and could be ranked in the top 10 of the tribe. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become the #1 expert of the young generation of the Billowing Saint tribe. But now, he had been defeated by a blue-robed sword artist who was even younger than the Saint's son. The two wanted to help Goldwind Saint Sun, but Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River were not easy to deal with. Their attacking power might be weaker than Yi Chen's, but their speed and defense were horrifying. The two could barely maintain the situation, so how could they escape? Shoot! The number of people brought by Goldwind Saint Sun surpassed Yi Chen's group in the end. Seeing that Goldwind Saint Sun was in danger, some of them took out short spears from their backs and threw them at Yi Chen. Yi Chen did not disregard the short spears. His defense could be said to be his weak point. It was worse than any Sea of Soul realm expert who had condensed a martial soul. With the amplification of his consciousness, even if these short spears could not kill him, they could still heavily injure him. It was not worth the risk. The destruction sword brandished several beams of light, chopping down all the incoming short spears. Yi Chen slightly bent his knees and suddenly shot up. In the next moment, a huge crack appeared where he was just a moment ago. The soil around the crack turned into dust, and the attacker was none other than Goldwind Saint Sun, who had been beaten to the point of vomiting blood by Yi Chen. With the support of his subordinates, Goldwind Saint Sun was able to withstand Yi Chen's attacks. He seized the opportunity and took advantage of the time when Yi Chen was exhausted from dealing with the short spears to quickly condense his consciousness attack, wanting to catch him unprepared. He truly didn't expect Yi Chen to react so quickly, easily dodging his killing blow. Puff 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 puff, dodging Goldwind Saint Sun's sneak attack, Yi Chen did not immediately charge forward and fight a life-and-death battle. Instead, he followed the inertia and floated near the group of subterranean humans that had besieged him. With a shake of his right hand, a sword light shone brilliantly and blood splattered. Psyche Cage. Seeing Yi Chen killing his subordinates as if he was chopping vegetables, Goldwind Saint Sun clenched his teeth and created a psyche barrier around Yi Chen, wanting to trap him inside. Then, he would gather his subordinates and launch several volleys. However, just as the psyche cage was formed, Yi Chen walked out with sword steps. That thin psyche barrier simply couldn't bear his casual sword strike. Too powerful. Is he still an astral reaching expert? Yi Chen had killed a lot of subterranean humans, and the more he killed, the more he saved a few astral reaching experts. These astral reaching experts, seeing Yi Chen slaughter the subterranean humans so easily and tear apart Goldwind Saint Sun's ace attack, couldn't help but be stupefied. In their eyes, even Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River weren't this fierce. Even Master Grade Sword Intent couldn't explain Yi Chen's power. Breaking away from the psyche cage, Yi Chen's figure flickered and suddenly appeared in Murong Qingqing's direction. One of the people surrounding Murong Qingqing glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and was greatly alarmed. However, before he could say a second word, his throat was slashed, and he died without any hesitation. The other two were somewhat alarmed and wanted to move closer to Goldwind Saint Sun. However, Murong Qingqing's eyes and hands were sharp. She shot out like a butterfly and slammed her palm on the chest of the person on the left. With a kacha sound, the chest of the person struck caved in. Blood and minced meat spurted out of his mouth. He immediately suffered a life-threatening injury and lost all his battle strength. The other person was overtaken by Yi Chen, who had a strange footwork, and his neck was pierced. Yi Chen was just about to deal with Goldwind Saint Sun when his soul power sensed a large group of people advancing at high speed. The leader's aura was incomparably powerful. Merely his gaze gave off a soul-tearing oppressive feeling. A peerless expert is coming. Faintly changing their expressions, Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing sucked in deep breaths and raised their speed to the limit. In a few blinks of an eye, they were already 1 li away. Goldwind Saint Sun thought of something and roared, "Don't let a single one of them escape." Yes. The group of underground humans dispersed, sealing Demon Ancestor and the rest. Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River exchanged a glance and simultaneously abandoned their opponents, fleeing the battlefield. They were very clear that the newcomer was even more powerful than the two of them combined. In terms of will, it was at least equivalent to a Daoist grade expert. And once the will transformed into intent, it would be more than 3 or 4 times stronger, enough to sweep through everyone present. Peng peng peng. How could the underground humans encircling them be the opponents of Yin Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River? With a single clash, a gap was torn open in the encirclement. Old Man Sky Eagle, Taoist Black Snake, and the other Sea of Soul Realm experts also saw that something was amiss. They closely followed behind Yin Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River, frantically flying away. Rock Spirit Warrior and Yuan Gold Spirit Warrior's luck wasn't too good. Just as they were about to move, they were intercepted by Goldwind Saint Sun. The result was self-evident, and they died on the spot. Just like this, the originally anxious battle instantly collapsed as the reinforcements of the Billowing Saint race approached. Not a single person wanted to fight to the death, wishing that their parents could give them a way out so that their speed could surpass the others. Kill! Kill! In less than 5 breaths' time, the number of casualties surpassed the previous battle. Less than 20 people survived, and among these 20, there were still 7 or 8 people in the encirclement. Rumble. With a huge sound, the 7 or 8 people in the encirclement were completely annihilated. The one who acted was the white-haired old man who had just arrived. His body was similarly covered in golden fur, and his 2 eyebrows were extremely conspicuous, like 2 flying dragons. Great Elder. Sang Qing and Bian bowed. The white-haired old man looked at Goldwind Saint Sun. How could so many people die? Goldwind Saint Sun sucked in a deep breath and said gloomily, I miscalculated. Apart from the 2 people reported by the sacred snake, there was another more powerful person. I couldn't stop him. Before departing, the clan had already received the news of the outsiders. The arrival of the Billowing Saint race's great elder was within his expectations. The white-haired old man nodded and raised his eyes to look at Yi Chen and the rest several li away. Suddenly, his brows raised and he said in a low voice, not good. That's the conveyor gate of the sacred land. You 3 follow me. The rest of you return to the clan to rest. Swish. As soon as his words faded, the white-haired old man shot out like an arrow leaving a bow. Goldwind Saint Sun, Sang Qing, and Bian didn't dare to be negligent and chased after the white-haired old man. The speed of the 4 was too fast, especially the white-haired old man. Under the amplification of his will, each step he took covered 200 to 300 meters. As he caught up to the Sea of Soul Realm experts, he waved his palm, and a frightening will storm instantly crushed them to death. There's a conveyor gate on that mountain. Hurry! At this moment, speed was life. If they were not fast enough, they would be caught by the white-haired old man sooner or later. With the means of killing Sea of Soul Realm experts in an instant, even if they joined hands, they wouldn't be his opponent. Yi Chen pulled Murong Qingqing's hand. His sword intent surged to the limit, bringing the 2 with him. Chapter 435. Flawless. The white-haired elder's willpower was unbelievably powerful. With a thought, 2 huge mental power webs were formed instantly, blocking in front of Yi Chen and the others. It seemed like they were about to close up. Yi Chen frowned. The white-haired elder's will net could not be mentioned in the same breath as Goldwind Saint Sun's. It looked like a huge net, but in fact, it was covered by a thin layer of will without a single gap. Apart from that, these 2 will nets were not just 1 layer, but 3 layers. If the 3 layers were stacked on top of each other, then it would be fine. However, these 3 layers were unique, intertwining with each other without any connection point. Yi Chen was very clear that it was impossible to cut open the will net in a short time. By the time he did so, the white-haired elder would have already caught up. Therefore, if he wanted to live, he had to break through the 2 will nets before they closed. If he was 1 step slower, then he would die. Thinking up to here, Yi Chen's forehead swelled like a diamond bead. The sword soul embryo in his soul sea blossomed with halos one after another. Surging sword intent swept out like raging waves, wrapping around Yi Chen and pushing him forward at an extreme speed. At this moment, Yi Chen's sword's soul embryo was fully activated for the first time. How could Yin Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River not see how frightening the will nets were? They also did not have the confidence to tear them apart in an instant. After all, martial will was still inferior to sword will in terms of offense, and the difference was not just 1 or 2 levels. Yin Wind Escape. As a master-level expert, Yin Demon Ancestor had created 2 profound sense martial skills. One was Yin Demon Chop, and the other was Yin Wind Escape. As for using earth as sky, it was not created by him. Instead, he had cultivated the profound sense martial skills of his predecessors. Yin Wind Escape, as the name suggested, was a profound sense movement art. Yin Demon Ancestor had only created it in the past 10 years. Although he had lost his Jin Yuan and could not display the essence of this movement art, he did not have too many thoughts about it at the moment. With a flash of the grey whirlwind, the figure of the Yin Demon Ancestor disappeared. Master J-Driver's reaction was not slower than Master Yin Demon's at all. The profound movement art he had used was thousandly in one stroke. One could tell that it was extraordinary just from the name alone. In fact, this movement art was indeed extraordinary. It was only a step away from the mid-grade profound, and was at the peak of low-grade profounds. The Jade River Spirit Master's figure paused for a moment, and his speed became more and more exaggerated. There was no obstruction along the way, and even the naked eye could not catch up to him. Xiao! Yi Chen brought Murong Qingcheng and broke through ahead of time. At this moment, the mental power net was about to close up. Just when the 2 mental power nets were about to close up, the Yin Demon Ancestor slashed them apart and rushed out of the blockade with Master Jade River. The white-haired old man's face darkened when he saw this scene. He didn't expect that his all-out attack would still allow the 4 of them to escape. If they were allowed to enter the sacred land through the teleportation gate, where would the billowing saint tribe hide their face? One had to know that this had happened once a year ago. The white-haired old man stretched out his left hand and clenched it. Puff! At the same time, the 2 spiritual power webs merged together and formed a circle, completely trapping Old Man Sky Eagle, Taoist Black Snake, Taoist Iron Wood, and the others. Under their despairing gazes, the spiritual power webs suddenly shrunk, squeezing them to death. At this point, only Yi Chen and the other 3 were left in the underground world. They had suffered heavy casualties, and even the Taoist masters had died. They were less than 50 miles away from the mountain peak with the teleportation gate. In the past, 50 miles would only take 2 to 3 blinks of an eye for a grandmaster. Unfortunately, in the underground world, they couldn't break the speed of sound no matter how hard they tried. There was a huge difference. Shoo 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 shoo, Goldwind Saint Child and the other 2 kept attacking Yi Chen and the other 3. Mental power blades, spears, and hammers rained down like a torrential storm. If not for the fact that the distance between them wasn't too close, the chances of the 4 escaping was less than 30%. Even now, they were still in a precarious situation. 40 li. 30 li. 20 li. Seeing that the 4 were about to reach the peak, the white-haired old man took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Seems like we have to get serious." Hearing this, Goldwind Saint Child and the other 2 were shocked. They couldn't care less about attacking Yi Chen and the rest, and frantically retreated. At the same time, they set up layer after layer of mental power barriers, as if something terrible was about to happen. Taking a deep breath, the white-haired old man suddenly roared out loud. With him as the center, a shapeless mass of consciousness began to spin unbelievably, like a rolling snowball. The scope of the consciousness storm grew larger and larger, and the spinning power grew stronger and stronger. It seemed as if a void tornado that connected the sky and the earth had risen in the void, spreading rapidly in all directions, affecting the surroundings. Not good. Yin Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River were behind Yi Chen and the other 2, and were the closest to the white-haired old man. As soon as the mental power tornado formed, they felt a suction force sweeping over, reducing their speed. They realized that this mental power tornado was no different from the one they came in with. The only difference was that it was 10 times or even 100 times stronger. Bastard! Demon Ancestor was furious. As far as he was concerned, apart from the high and mighty Life and Death Kings, nobody had ever been able to force him into such an awkward situation. Not even the famous master-level experts could do it. After all, there was a huge difference between being defeated and being beaten to the point where he couldn't even retaliate. If we were on the surface, none of us would need to be afraid of him. Master Jade River felt both sullen and helpless. At this moment, they could only think of one sentence: a tiger falling into a plain would be bullied by dogs, and a dragon swimming in shallow waters would be toyed with by shrimps. Even at his peak, the white-haired old man would be equal to them, perhaps even inferior. Come here. The white-haired old man had no interest in the two's sullenness. He continued to push his mental power, and the rotation speed of the mental power tornado suddenly increased, making it impossible for Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River to advance. Of course, the white-haired old man's movements were also very slow. At this critical moment, a cruel light flickered in Demon Ancestor's eyes. Master Jade River sensed it and said in alarm, Demon Ancestor, you dare, why wouldn't I dare? 2 dead is better than 1 alive. Master Jade River, you can die in my place. A palm imprinted on Master Jade River's chest. Demon Ancestor borrowed the recoil to advance at high speed, while Master Jade River spurted out a mouthful of blood and was swept away by the mental power tornado without any suspense. He still wanted to resist, but the white-haired old man's mental power was so powerful that he couldn't resist at all. In a few moments, he was heavily injured, and his head exploded by the white-haired old man's fist. Seeing this scene, Yuchen didn't feel anything. At this critical moment of life and death, he would have done the same. Of course, this was on the premise that the two didn't have any deep friendship. Don't even think of escaping. After killing Master Jade River, the white-haired old man looked at Demon Ancestor, Yuchen, and the other two once again. With a thought, the tornado became more and more powerful. Even the smaller mountains were swept over, shattering into pieces. Some of the rivers even flowed back, seeming to be sucked into the tornado. Soon. Feeling that the sucking power of the tornado was getting more and more powerful, Yuchen had no choice but to push his sword spirit to its limit, activating his sword intent to increase its speed. The good thing was that the sword intent was indeed a great weapon when it came to increasing speed. The sucking power of the mental power tornado had just reached him when it was sliced open, giving Yuchen more space to escape. 9 li. 5 li. 3 li. 1 li. When there was still 1 li to go, Yuchen could already clearly see the patterns and the marks left behind by the passage of time. Demon Ancestor was right behind him, and the distance between them was less than 150 meters. The 3 of them, 2 in front and 1 behind, were in a race against death. Several li away, with the aid of the mental power tornado, the white-haired old man could easily sense the 3 of them. He slightly slowed down the mental power tornado, and then suddenly increased it again. This slow seemed insignificant, even superfluous. However, the effect it had was incomparably huge. It was like fishing. If you pulled on the fishing line without letting go, the fish would be in a deadlock with you. However, if you loosened the fishing line and suddenly pulled it up, the fish would be instantly pulled up. Yuchen and the other two's situation was similar to the fish. Under the white-haired old man's ingenious manipulation, their feet actually left the ground, and instead of advancing, they retreated. Demonic palm imprint, annihilation. A black light flickered in Murong Qingqing's eyes. She turned around and struck out with her palm, and the suction force was reduced by 30%. The demonic palm imprint's annihilation could annihilate all living things, but it did not include will. Unfortunately, mental power was not will. Although mental power was many times stronger than will, it was also because of this that it was no longer pure, and could be traced. Murong Qingqing's palm had directly scattered a portion of the mental power, transforming it into pure will. Naturally, the suction force was reduced by a lot. Of course, it was also because the distance was too far, and the white-haired old man's mental power was relatively weak. After all, the gap between the two was too big. Feeling his body lighten, Yichen grabbed the opportunity and arrived beside the passage gate with a few flashes. Then, he brought Murong Qingqing into the whirlpool. "You're dead for sure. When we reach the outside world, I'll make you die without a burial place." Yin demon ancestor gnashed his teeth while throwing out two high-grade artifacts and roared, "Explode!" Rumble. The high-grade artifacts did not explode, but the Yin demon ancestor's will that was stored inside exploded. This bit of will explosion did not pose much of a threat, but it was precisely because of this bit of will explosion that the deadlock situation became unbalanced. Yin demon ancestor's calculation was correct. One high-grade artifact was not enough, and only two high-grade artifacts could barely break the balance. The reason why the will could explode was because high-grade artifacts had the ability to store a bit of will. Otherwise, if one's own will exploded, their martial spirit would completely collapse, and they would be deader than dead. Swish. Not caring about the heartache of losing two high-grade artifacts, Yin demon ancestor's figure flickered, disappearing into the passage gate. The mental power tornado dispersed, and the white-haired old man flew over with a pale face. He reached out his hand to grab the somewhat damaged high-grade artifact, and said with an ashen face, "I don't believe that every outsider can pass the Holy Land's trial. If you can't, all of you will become new stone statues." Chapter 436. The Holy Land was not the Holy Land of the Billowing Saint clan, but the Holy Land of the first layer of the underground world. It was said that it was closely related to the Holy Land of the second layer. A year ago, Serenity was supposed to be married to a powerful saint son of a saint clan in the second layer of the underground world. At that time, she and that outsider young man had just left the Holy Land, causing the Billowing Saint clan to lose a lot of face. The Holy Land was very dangerous. If the underground humans entered, they would most likely die. No, not even 1 out of 100 would survive. However, what made the underground humans puzzled was that the chances of outsiders surviving in the Holy Land were much higher. At least, there were many examples of that. The greater the danger, the greater the benefits. The Holy Land had existed since the ancient times, and contained many secrets and treasures. Every 100 years, the Billowing Saint clan would organize a team to enter the Holy Land, and so would some of the surrounding saint clans. This time, it had not even been 100 years. Being alone, the white-haired elder did not dare to enter. "Head elder, did they enter?" Goldwind Saint's son and the other two flew over. The white-haired elder said expressionlessly, "This matter is over. Let's go back." No matter how unwilling he was, this mission had failed. Count them lucky. But, I wonder how long this luck will last. Who knows, the next time we enter the Holy Land, we might see their statues. Goldwind Saint's son said coldly. Woo woo woo. Woo 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 woo. The black gale blew everywhere like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Everywhere it passed, it would let out a woo-woo sound, and the towering mountain peaks would be shaved off. The moment Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing appeared, they saw a gust of black wind blowing over. The two subconsciously strengthened their defense. What surprised them was that the Zhen Yuan that had been compressed in the deepest part of their dantian broke free and formed a layer of protective Zhen Yuan outside their bodies, firmly protecting them. The Zhen Yuan here is not restricted. Murong Qingqing said after resisting the black wind with some difficulty. Yi Chen said, "My spirit power is still being suppressed." No wonder they did not catch up. When the spirit power was suppressed, the soul would also be suppressed. Once the soul was weakened, the will would naturally be affected. As for how much the will was suppressed in the underground world, Yi Chen did not know. Pitter-patter. As the black wind collided with Yi Chen's protective true essence, it issued a continuous series of explosive sounds. A faint feeling of dizziness suddenly appeared. Yi Chen finally noticed the black wind. After carefully identifying it, he said, "This is the soul-scattering astral wind. It is an astral wind formed from the combination of metal origin energy and dark origin energy. Not only that, but there is also a faint trace of will contained within, making this astral wind comparable to astral energy. The difference between the astral wind and the astral qi was that the former was mixed with the air, which had more impurities. Therefore, its power was not as powerful as the pure astral qi. However, with the enhancement of the weird will, the astral wind's power was not weaker than the astral qi, which was powerful enough to threaten 99% of the astral reaching realm warriors. I wonder if the Yin demon ancestor has entered." Murong Qingqing frowned slightly. "He should be coming in. But there is no need to worry." Yi Chen knew what she was worried about. Since this place could not suppress Jin Yuan, then the Yin demon ancestor would be a true master-level expert after entering. Even if the two of them joined hands, they would not be able to defeat him with a single hand. However, they did not have any enmity with the Yin demon ancestor, nor did they have any conflicts of interest. Even if they met, it would not be a big deal. As for the future, they could talk about it in the future. The Yin demon ancestor had indeed entered. However, he was not in the same place as Yi Chen and Murong Qingcheng. The moment he came out, a strange gale faintly emitting three-colored lights blew over. Its might was incomparable, almost the same as an all-out attack of an ordinary Sea of Soul realm expert. However, the next moment, the Yin demon ancestor let out a sigh of relief. He discovered that he could finally use Jin Yuan. With Jin Yuan, what could these three-colored gale do? Green, yellow, black. It's actually the soul-leaving astral wind. No, it contains a weird will. Its might is not inferior to the astral qi formed by the fusion of three kinds of yuan qi. The Yin demon ancestor was somewhat astonished. He had never heard of a will contained in the wind. Was it man-made or natural? Walking on the desolate and hard ground, the Yin demon ancestor was fearless. As long as he had Jin Yuan, not to mention his battle power increasing by several folds, his life-saving means had also increased. The only thing that made him feel a bit pained was that he had lost 2 upper-grade artifacts in order to get rid of the white-haired old man. It should be known that even if he was a master-level expert, he did not have many upper-grade artifacts. At this moment, he only had 1 upper-grade artifact left. The Yin demon ancestor's brows twitched. As he retreated, he slashed out with his blade. Puchi. The huge centipede that had just popped out had its head chopped off, black juices splattering everywhere. 9th grade ancient demonic beast, Black Mountain Centipede. The Yin demon ancestor recognized the centipede with a single glance. A centipede died, but it did not stop moving. Although the centipede had its head chopped off, its lower body still broke out of the ground and swept toward the Yin demon ancestor. Courting death. The Yin demon ancestor sneered. Being chased by the white-haired old man had always annoyed him, and he had been wondering where to vent it. With a wave of his blade, dozens of sawtooth blade chi crisscrossed. The centipede was instantly dismembered, its flesh scattering in all directions. While the Yin demon ancestor had dealt with the Black Mountain Centipede, Yi Chen and Murong Qingcheng were besieged by a group of 7th grade ancient demonic beasts, snake-scaled wolves. The snake-scaled wolf was a mutated demonic beast. Its body was like a wolf, but it was several times bigger than an ordinary wolf. It was more than 2 meters tall, and it had no fur on its body. Instead, it had scales that flickered with dark blue radiance. These scales were very small compared to its huge body, only the size of a thumb. However, it was precisely because of this that the densely packed scales of the snake-scaled wolf had a very high defense, comparable to some 8th grade demonic beasts. From time to time, the snake-scaled wolf would spit out a ball of black light, bombarding Yi Chen and Murong Qingcheng. Green Lotus Chi Transformation. Like a porcupine, countless sword chi shot out from Yi Chen's body. After a round of attacks, a large number of snake-scaled wolves died. With Yi Chen's strength, not to mention a large group of 7th-grade demonic beasts, even a large group of 8th-grade demonic beasts would not be able to do anything to him. Just as the two of them were about to eliminate all the snake-scaled wolves, the remaining ones seemed to have sensed something and ran desperately in a certain direction. Yi Chen did not think that the snake-scaled wolves were afraid. He had killed so many of them before, but they were not afraid at all. Following the gaze of a snake-scaled wolf as it turned around, Yi Chen turned his head to look. On the horizon, a layer of black chi was moving towards them. The speed of the black chi was extremely fast, allowing Yi Chen to clearly see its appearance. Rather than calling it black chi, it would be more accurate to call it black mist. This black mist that covered the entire mountain was like a ghostly mist, from which ghostly wails and wolf howls could be heard. Faintly, Yi Chen could see many blurry human faces and human bodies, as well as the vague silhouettes of some demonic beasts. Wherever the black mist went, the demonic beasts that were hidden in the depths would be swept out. Their bodies would rapidly decay, and a mass of light would merge into the black mist. Soul Devour. Yi Chen's complexion changed. Not caring about hiding anything, he took out his flying puppet from his storage ring. Yi Chen had 2 flying puppets, a leopard puppet and a rock puppet. The leopard puppet was equipped with mid-grade spirit stones, while the rock puppet was equipped with upper-grade spirit stones. This way, he could change them at any time at a critical moment. At this moment, Yi Chen took out the rock puppet. "Get on." Leaping onto the back of the rock puppet, Yi Chen said. Murong Qingcheng was somewhat astonished and quickly jumped on. Swish! With the upper-grade spirit stones as the driving force, the rock puppet's speed was as fast as an aurora. In 2 or 3 blinks of an eye, its speed had increased to 5 times the speed of sound, then 7 times the speed of sound, and then 10 times the speed of sound. It was as fast as lightning, leaving all the snake-scaled wolves behind. "This is an upper-grade flying puppet?" Murong Qingcheng asked. Yi Chen nodded. "I found it in the ruins of a puppet sect branch. Its maximum speed is 10 times the speed of sound, comparable to ordinary Sea of Soul realm experts. However, it consumes upper-grade spirit stones. The black mist's speed was at least 6 or 7 times the speed of sound." The snake-scaled wolves were overtaken without any leeway to resist. Their bodies decayed one after another, and their souls floated out. The scene was extremely spectacular and horrifying, as if they had arrived at a hellish world. Half an hour later, the two of them rode on the giant rock puppet and traveled 25,000 miles away, leaving the soul-devouring black fog far behind. Putting away the rock puppet, the two landed on the ground. As far as the eye could see, it was a wilderness overgrown with weeds. Strangely, they could see a stone statue every few meters. These stone statues were either standing, sitting, lying on the ground, or buried in the soil. They didn't know if it was an illusion, but the expressions of the stone statues were vivid and lifelike, as if they had a mind of their own. Their originally expressionless faces all had a hint of a strange smile. They don't look any different from the statues in the stoneman array. Yi Chen recalled that the stoneman array had fallen into the underground world together with the undying altar. There might be some unknown relationship between the two. Kacha. When he passed by a half-buried statue of a stone man, a few cracks suddenly appeared in the soil beside the statue. Murong Qingqing cautiously said, "There's something inside the statue." As soon as she said those words, the statue broke out of the soil. A cold smile appeared on its stone face as it twisted its arm and punched toward the two. Heaven's rebuke. Murong Qingqing's palm met the attack, and the statue was knocked back dozens of meters by the repulsive force. Kacha! 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 The surrounding stone golem statues all came to life, and the smiles on their faces were either eerie or demented. If it wasn't a cruel smile, it wouldn't look like a normal smile. It gave off a chilling feeling, and it was incredibly evil. Sky Thunder Cut. Yu Qin didn't dare to be careless. He threw out his most powerful sword attack. The sword light was like snow as it cut down 7 or 8 statues in a straight line. The statues were cut open, and black smoke rose from the broken parts. Then, the upper parts reconnected without a trace of damage. Undying body. Yu Qin and Murong Qingqing both thought about the undying body. They had come to the underground world because of the undying body. It was very unlikely that the undying body had nothing to do with the underground world. However, this kind of undying body was too creepy, and normal people wouldn't choose it. Of course, it was just their guess. No one knew what the real undying body was like. Chapter 437. Demonic Palm Imprint. As more and more statues rushed over, Murong Qingqing threw out a palm imprint in the direction with the most number. The palm energy contained the annihilation attribute caused all the statues in the area to float in the air. As if they had lost their gravity, they were immediately annihilated. However, in the next moment, the black smoke once again gathered the countless stone powders and reformed the statues. The undying stone statue was unexpectedly difficult to deal with. Seems like I'll have to use the attributed sword intent. Back in the Sun God Palace, Yu Qin had used the slaughter sword intent to shave off a lot of the undying monsters' yuan qi, making them unable to recover their peak battle power in a short period of time. The more they fought, the weaker they became. At this moment, the slaughter sword intent naturally couldn't be used, because the opponent was not a living being. It was the same Sky Thunder Cut, but because it contained the destruction sword intent, it was much more powerful than the ordinary Sky Thunder Cut. As the sword slashed out, the destructive aura released by the sword was enough to make people tremble in fear. The weeds in a straight line instantly lost their vitality. Not only did they wither, but they were also incinerated into black powder. The blazing sword light swept out in all directions, causing the dozen statues to pause for a moment. Several large and small sword scars appeared on their bodies. At this moment, the black smoke within the sword scars couldn't come out at all. Every strand that came out would be erased by the remnant destruction sword intent. The destruction sword intent had restrained the undying bodies of the statues. Restrained? Murong Qingqing didn't know much about attributed sword intent. She only knew that once one comprehended an attributed sword intent, one's sword Dao would far surpass others. For example, a life and death king who comprehended an attributed sword intent would be stronger than a life and death king with ordinary sword intent. As for why some life and death kings couldn't comprehend an attributed sword intent, it was not only because of their comprehension ability, but also because of their soul. After all, there was a gap between people. No matter how rich a cripple was, he would still be a cripple. As far as she knew, Yu Qin had more than one attributed sword intent. He should have 3. One person comprehending 3 attributed sword intents was something that had never happened in the history of True Spirit Continent. If he could cultivate 3 attributed sword intents to the life and death realm, his sword Dao would be absolutely terrifying. As for whether he could surpass the ancient Sword King and become the second Sword King or the first Sword Emperor, she couldn't be sure. After all, comprehensive development was much more difficult than a single development. Even if he was 8 in every aspect, he might not even reach 10 in one aspect. Reaching the pinnacle of any aspect would be extremely frightening. However, no matter what, as long as Yu Qin reached life and death realm, his achievements would not be low. Green Lotus Mountain Splitter. Holding the Green Lotus sword, Yu Qin waved it in a circle. Immediately, a huge sword light shrouded in a destructive aura turned into a perfect blue sun, chopping all the statues in its range into 2. Sizzling sounds could be heard as the black smoke gradually thinned out. Let's go. There was no need to clash head-on with these statues. Yu Qin chose a direction and continued forward, with Murong Qingqing following closely behind. After walking for a long time, the two didn't encounter any new statues. Gradually, the two arrived at the side of a huge river. The river was dozens of li wide and immeasurably long. In this dusky environment, the river gave off a cold and emotionless feeling. On the riverside stood a huge stone stele with 6 large black words written on it. Demon statue heart, soul extinguishing wave. For a moment, the two couldn't understand the meaning of these words, but they didn't pay any attention to it and continued forward along the river. After traveling for about 10 miles, the river gradually became turbulent, forming whirlpools. It turned out that this place was the intersection of 3 rivers, and on one side of the intersection stood a huge black mountain. The position of the black mountain facing the river was actually a 100 meters tall stone statue built on half of the mountain. The stone statue was built according to the mountain, and it was one with the mountain, completely indistinguishable from each other. The stone statue's color was azure with a hint of black. It was sitting there, and its hands and feet were not those of a human's, but those of a demonic beast. For some unknown reason, the two felt an extremely frightening demonic intent from the stone statue. Under this demonic intent, the entire stone statue seemed to have come to life. It was clearly a demon statue. Demon statue heart, could it be referring to this demon statue? No matter how I look at it, this demon statue is not an ordinary one. Yi Chen was very clear that since the stone statue could come to life and surround them, this demon statue should be even more powerful. He just didn't know what the demon statue's heart was referring to. Sitting near the intersection of 3 rivers, the demon statue overlooked the common people. The turbulent river did not calm down because of it, but instead became even more violent and soul-stirring. If this was the outside world, it was unknown how many cargo ships would have met with mishaps here. Buzz! The demon statue's eyeballs suddenly turned, and as its eyeballs turned, the wind and clouds in the world changed, and waves rose up from the river, rushing towards the two. In the next moment, the demon statue suddenly stood up. The moment it stood up, the space around it trembled, and a terrifying demonic intent covered the sky and earth, radiating out in all directions. Demonic will. Yi Chen took a deep breath. He wasn't surprised by the demon statue coming to life. What surprised him was that the demon statue contained a completely different martial will. It was clearly the extremely rare demonic will. The demonic will was the same as the sword will, both originated from the martial way, but it had already formed a perfect system. In ancient times, those who possessed the demonic will were the true demons. After splitting apart the waves with a sword, Yi Chen and Murong Qingcheng looked straight at the demon statue. Rumble. The demon statue's body was slightly stiff when it stood up, but when it punched out, one could see how fast it was. Before the fist arrived, the fist pressure had already scattered the gray clouds in the sky. Under the enhancement of the demonic will, the majestic fist force seemed to be able to penetrate through the earth. Without any hesitation, Yi Chen met the fist force with his sword. Instant. Thunder rumbled in the sky, and everything within a radius of dozens of miles darkened. Dark clouds gathered from all directions, pouring down thunder and lightning. The river below was directly evaporated into the sky by the explosive power of the sword chi and the fist force, revealing the pitch-black riverbed. Involuntarily, Yi Chen glided hundreds of meters away, his clothes fluttering in the wind like flags. Force field cut. Murong Qingcheng's intuition told her that the demon statue would be of great use to her, so she also launched an attack. 2 completely opposite force fields clashed together, forming a horrifying cutting power, cutting towards the demon statue's head. At the same time, she pushed the sky demon power field to its limit, just in case. Crack! The demon statue's reaction was very slow, and the cutting force field cut out a huge cut on its neck. Of course, compared to its body size, the cut was still a bit small, so it was not a big deal. Its eyes turned to Murong Qingcheng, and it threw out another punch. Puff! The sky demon power field outside Murong Qingcheng's body instantly collapsed, and she spurted out a mouthful of blood, flying back several thousand meters. However, in Yi Chen's eyes, it had a different meaning. As far as he was concerned, this was Murong Qingcheng's true strength, or close to it. Otherwise, ordinary extreme astral reaching experts would not be able to survive this strike, even if they had condensed a martial soul embryo. Sucking in a deep breath, the sword intent on Yi Chen's body became increasingly dense, piercing through the dark clouds in the sky. His entire body seemed like an unsheathed peerless sword. Swish! Extending his body, Yi Chen shot toward the demonic statue and slashed out in the air. The might of this slash was unfathomable. Half of the demon statue's body was almost cut open. What made Yi Chen a bit surprised was that the demon statue didn't have an undying body, and the cut couldn't be healed. As for what was pushing it, it was probably the remnant demonic will. The demon statue's body swayed, but it still threw out a stiff punch. The range of the fist energy was too large, and Yi Chen couldn't avoid it. Therefore, he could only block with his sword and retreat several hundred meters, his blood and qi boiling. At this moment, Murong Qingcheng charged over with blood staining the corner of her mouth. Facing the demon statue, she used the Sky Demon Palm Imprint's Sky Rebuke. Originally, this palm couldn't pose any threat to the demon statue. However, Yi Chen's sword strike had cut open half of the demon statue's body, causing its upper body to sway, as if it would collapse at any moment. This caused Murong Qingcheng's palm strike to cover its body with cracks. The demon statue, covered in cracks, didn't feel any pain. It punched out, and with a swish, a finger unexpectedly fell off. It turned out that it was already falling off when it clashed with Yi Chen. Now that it punched out, the finger shot out at an unimaginable speed, containing a tyrannical demonic will. Danger! Yi Chen swung out a sword light, cutting off the demon statue's finger. However, the demon statue's finger that had lost half of its finger still hit Murong Qingcheng, bringing her body several miles away. In midair, Murong Qingcheng's blood stained the finger, and a shocking scene happened. The finger and the demonic will on the demon statue in the distance left the body, pouring into Murong Qingcheng's soul sea between her eyebrows. Without the support of the demonic will, the demon statue suddenly collapsed. Only the right part of its chest remained, flying towards Murong Qingcheng. The demon statue's heart, so that's how it is. Yi Chen breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the entire demon statue was a demonic inheritance. In its chest, there should be the soul destruction wave. Murong Qingcheng cultivated the demonic cultivation method, so she naturally accepted this demonic inheritance. As the demonic will poured into her soul sea, a strange look flashed across Murong Qingcheng's face. Seeing the piece of the demon statue's chest flying towards her, she reached out and caught it. Pack! The stone shattered, revealing a piece of jade, a black jade. Are you okay? Yi Chen flew over and asked. Murong Qingcheng shook her head. I'm fine, but my martial will has directly transformed into the demonic will, and the embryonic form of my martial soul has also become the embryonic form of the demonic soul. Furthermore, it has advanced one step, approaching the true demonic soul. The soul has its own characteristics. Since the demonic will has accepted you, it means that you are suitable for the demonic Tao. With the Battle King's vast knowledge, how could Yi Chen not know about this? Some people couldn't comprehend the sword soul. Apart from the comprehension ability, it was also related to the soul. The soul could only accept ordinary sword wills, so it would be hard for one to have an elemental sword will. Murong Qingcheng's martial will had smoothly transformed into the demonic will, which meant that she was naturally suitable for the demonic Tao. Chapter 438. Without thinking too much, Murong Qingcheng focused her attention on the black jade. It was shining with a soft light, and it was very warm to the touch. As she poured in her Jin Yuan, a picture suddenly appeared in her mind and started to play. On the crimson wasteland, a real demon floated under the crimson moon. The demon had black bat wings on its back, 2 horns on its head, and silver pupils. There was no skin on its body, only a layer of armor. The demon was more than 2 meters tall, and from its appearance, it looked no different from a human. However, at a glance, there was only one feeling in the depths of one's heart, and that was that it was strong. It was not strong in terms of strength, but strong in nature. It seemed to be a powerful existence that was above humans. In front of the demon was a human in a black robe. If the demon was a natural demon, then this black-robed man was a postnatal demon. There was a black aura lingering around his body. This aura seemed to have a spirit, wisp by wisp. Boom! The evil demon with bat wings on its back chopped out with a hand blade, and a dark light covered the sky. Suddenly, the sky was shattered, and the earth cracked. Soul-extinguishing wave. The black-robed man raised his head, and his eyes revealed an arrogant and domineering look. He shook his palm, and the same black light condensed into a ball, which then shot out in a fan shape. Its power increased continuously, and not only did it cancel out the evil demon's attack, it even sent the opponent flying hundreds of miles away. In silence, the evil demon seemed to have lost its soul, and its body fell from the sky without a trace of injury. Murong Qingcheng, who was still in shock, tensed up. In her mind, the black-robed man smiled at her, and the fan-shaped light drowned her thoughts. Yi Qin did not disturb Murong Qingcheng, who was still motionless. He had the experience of receiving profound sense martial arts, so he knew that during the process of receiving information, his mind would be in a mess, and he would not be able to wake up for a while. If he disturbed her forcefully, it might hurt her spirit. After a long time, Murong Qingcheng opened her eyes. So, the soul-extinguishing wave is a low-rank profound sense martial art, and its attack focuses on the soul. If the soul defense is not strong, no matter how strong the body is, it would be useless. Yi Chen was slightly surprised as he said, a low-rank profound sense martial art that focuses on soul attacks. This is almost equivalent to a normal mid-rank profound sense martial art. The soul was different from the body. It was extremely fragile. If an ordinary Sea of Soul realm expert were to grasp the soul-extinguishing wave, they would be able to kill a Taoist or even a master-level expert. Of course, this Sea of Soul realm expert would also be instantly killed. Hiss. While the two of them were talking, a horned serpent suddenly shot out from the river that had just been refilled. The horned serpent was unknown in length, and its thickness reached an astonishing 10 meters. Its entire body was covered with scales the size of washbasins, and its head, which was the size of a tall building, was no different from an awl. As the serpent flicked its tongue, it was like a blood-red spear that was more than 10 meters long, and its speed was ridiculously fast. A strong gust of wind swept across, and the horned serpent pounced towards the two of them. The demonic aura that soared up into the sky caused the sky to darken once again. Lightning bolts streaked across the sky, striking down vertically. A few mountains nearby were forcibly blasted away, and charred rocks flew all over the sky. Murong Qingcheng wanted to test the strength of the demonic will. Her body did not move at all, and she sent out a palm that contained an unparalleled demonic will. Pang! The horned serpent snapped, and a huge palm imprint appeared on its forehead. Black chi rose from the palm imprint, and the serpent's huge body was blasted away before it could completely leave the river. Its head smashed into the mountain where the demonic statue was, and it died instantly. An 8th-grade ancient demonic beast could not even withstand a palm strike from Murong Qingcheng. It should be known that ancient demonic beasts were much more powerful than the current demonic beasts. A 7th-grade ancient demonic beast could contend against 8th-grade demonic beasts, and an 8th-grade ancient demonic beast was equivalent to a 9th-grade demonic beast. Even if it was not as powerful, it was not much weaker. However, it was still killed in one strike. The might of the demonic will was unfathomable. As the owner of the demonic will, Murong Qingcheng understood the pros and cons better than Yi Chen. She said, the demonic will is similar to the sword will in that it discards the amplification of defense and strengthens the offense. Moreover, it seems to have some side effects that are not really flaws. The same path of attack. Yi Chen was very clear that there was no strong or weak will. Marshall will walk the path of balance, developing offense, speed, and defense. The sword will was the strongest in offense, followed by speed, and the weakest in defense. The demonic will was probably the same. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to have such power. As for the subtle differences, he did not know. After all, he and Battle King had both comprehended sword will. Let's go. We might be able to find a way out here. At this moment, Yi Chen no longer wanted to obtain anything. His only thought was to leave this underground world. Murong Qingqing nodded. Looking at the hundreds of meters tall stone statue, Yin demon ancestor's face twitched. It was fine if it had the strength of a Taoist, but it actually had an undying body. No matter how he hit it, there was no damage at all. This left him completely helpless. Rumble. The stone statue punched out, and the wind from the fist scraped off layer after layer of the ground. Yin demon chop. Yin demon ancestor raised his blade and went up. One statue and one man fought for hundreds of rounds, but they could not do anything to the other. In the end, Yin demon ancestor had no choice but to give up and use earth as sky to knock the statue down. He then used the Yin wind escape technique and quickly left this place. One day and one night. After flying for a whole day and night, Yin demon ancestor finally got rid of the statue. The other party's speed almost made him collapse. Fortunately, it was still a bit slower than him. After a whole day, that bit of speed increased to tens of thousands of li, and there is a huge mountain range in front. On the plains, Yin demon ancestor looked at the distant mountain range. It was very different from the mountain ranges outside. The mountain was black, and the sky was also black like night. However, outside of the mountain range, it was a dusky day. The two formed a sharp contrast. Let's go in and take a look first. Just like Yi Chen, the Yin demon ancestor did not have the urge to get the undying body anymore. Of course, the undying body was placed right in front of him. He just wanted to leave the underground world and return to his own world. Otherwise, he would not be able to guarantee his own survival if he continued to stay here. No matter if it was the underground humans or the stone statues, they both made him feel extremely tired. Swish. Increasing his speed to about 8 times that of sound, Yin demon ancestor carefully entered the mountain range. In the depths of the mountain range, 2 figures were flying. They were precisely Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing. With the demonic will and the devil's soul embryo reaching the critical point, Murong Qingqing's speed was not much inferior to Yi Chen's. Her combat power had even doubled. Her gains could not be said to be small. There's something strange over there. Murong Qingqing's vision was extremely powerful. Even from thousands of li away, she could see the abnormality in the center of the mountain range. That area was filled with a layer of faint white light, as if there was a huge source of light. Let's go over. Yi Chen had also seen it, and his speed had increased by 30%. After a quarter of an hour, the two arrived at the place where the light was shining. The scene in front of them surprised them a bit. What entered their eyes was a vast valley filled with white light. Although it was called light, it was actually a bit like fog. To be more precise, it was countless rays of light entangled together. These rays of light were extremely twisted and wriggling unceasingly. Throwing a stone in, and seeing that there was nothing strange, the two operated their protective Jin Yuan and walked step by step into the valley. The white rays of light made contact with the protective Jin Yuan soundlessly, and there was no effect at all. However, the two could feel that the white rays of light and protective Jin Yuan had made contact. Moreover, there seemed to be some interaction between the two, as if they wanted to fuse together. After walking for dozens of li, the two saw an altar, an enlarged version of the undying altar. It was 100 meters tall and 400 meters wide, with 6 pillars that looked like they could support the heavens, reaching all the way into the pitch-black sky. The white rays of light were seeping out from these pillars. However, the higher they went, the darker the light became. The surface of the altar was the most dazzling. Undying altar, it should be the undying altar. I didn't think there would be an undying altar here as well. Yichen carefully examined it and could confirm that this altar was exactly the same as the one he had seen when he first entered. The only difference was probably the size. Arriving near the altar, Yichen found another beam of light shooting out from the center of the altar, shining on the opposite rock wall. The rock wall was as smooth as a mirror, just like the wall of a god. It was grand and vast, emitting a boundless ancient aura. Meanwhile, the light was shining on a hollow in the center. Surrounding the hollow were many human-shaped pits of different sizes. The big ones were around 100 meters, while the small ones were only a dozen meters. In front of the rock wall was a stone stele. On the stele, there were 4 ancient characters, Undying Rock Wall. Could there really be an undying body? Undying altar, undying rock wall, and the pits on the undying rock wall. Yichen seemed to have thought of something, but at the same time, he didn't seem to have thought of anything. He only knew that he needed to remember something, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to solve it. Murong Qingcheng said hesitantly, "Don't you think that the size of these pits is the same as the statues in the Stoneman spell?" "Yes. They are the golem statues." With Murong Qingcheng's reminder, Yichen immediately recalled that these pits were about the same size as the golem statues, even their shapes were similar. In order to solve this puzzle, they would have to replace the golem statues that fell from the surface. However, that rainforest was too far away from here, and the 2 of them had no way to get out, let alone bring them here. How could they accomplish their goal? Forget it, let's see what mysteries this undying altar has. Yichen focused his attention on the undying altar. Looking at the base of the altar, Yichen saw an inconspicuous crack. This wasn't a crack caused by damage, but a crack formed by 2 objects sticking together. The altar seemed to be able to rotate. Clatter clatter. Placing his palm on the edge of the altar, Yichen pushed it in a certain direction. Just as he expected, the top half of the altar slowly rotated, and the light emitted from the center of the altar began to change colors. Chapter 439. 3 colors. 4 colors. When the radiance changed from single to 6 colors, the entire undying rock wall started to tremble. Shortly after, a radiance was emitted from the human-shaped crater on the wall. This radiance was so penetrative that the surface of the wall turned transparent, as if it was a huge piece of 6-colored unpolished jade. In the next moment, the undying rock wall shone brightly, illuminating the surroundings. The pitch-black sky instantly turned white, and halos spread out continuously. What's going on? Yin Demon Ancestor raised his head and looked at the center of the mountain range. Outside the Holy Land, in the rainforest of the first layer of the underground world, the stone statues that had fallen from the surface suddenly trembled. All of a sudden, all the stone statues left the ground and flew towards the Holy Land. Along the way, the stone statues suddenly disappeared into the void. This scene was witnessed by the Greenwood St. Clan's clansmen. They thought that they had seen a miracle, and their mouths were wide open. The stone statues didn't go through the conveyor gate, but directly broke through the spatial layer and arrived in the Holy Land. A strange thing happened. The stone statues in the Holy Land seemed to have sensed the invasion of the foreign stone statues. All of them revived and roared furiously in the direction of the flying statues. Some of the closer ones even chased after the stone statues and attacked crazily, giving off a horrifying feeling of killing each other. Pang! 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 The foreign stone statues blossomed with a resplendent radiance. All the stone statues that came into contact with the radiance instantly crumbled, and their undying bodies lost their effects. The stone statues flew at a very fast speed, appearing and disappearing in the void. In almost a dozen blinks of an eye, they arrived at the Radiant Valley, and then arranged themselves in a formation in the air, embedding themselves into the human-shaped pits on the undying rock wall one by one. Originally, the radiance of the undying rock wall had illuminated the heaven and earth. However, when the stone statues returned to their positions, the radiance quickly retracted and concentrated inside each statue. Complicated patterns appeared on the statues' bodies, and these patterns connected with the obscure patterns on the undying rock wall, forming a complete map. The radiance then followed the map to the center of the undying rock wall, right above the hole. Rumble. A dull sound rang out, and a long stone was pulled out. Although the stone was not gold, it emitted a golden light that was purer than gold. Through the slightly transparent golden stone, Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing could see that there was a scroll sealed inside, a golden scroll. The golden light was emitted by the scroll, and had nothing to do with the stone. Golden Scroll. As the initiator, Yi Chen could naturally tell that the golden scroll was extraordinary. He had a hunch that the golden scroll recorded the cultivation secrets of the immortal body. Buzz. Cracks gradually covered the surface of the stone, and rays of even stronger golden light leaked out, causing the stone to look like a golden hedgehog. This was not the end. On top of the stone, a golden shadow gradually took shape. The golden shadow's face was blurry, but the aura it emitted was enough to make people want to worship it. Golden light, golden shadow. Could it be the immortal body? Thousands of li away from the center of the mountain range, Yin demon ancestor's face flashed with astonishment. Back then, when he had obtained the map of the immortal body, there was also a picture on it. On the picture was a golden scroll. Within the golden light emitted by the scroll, there was a golden shadow sitting cross-legged, which was extremely similar to the scene in front of him, although he did not see the golden scroll. Immortal body, yes, it's the immortal body. Who opened the restriction and allowed the immortal body to reappear in the world? Bastard, I want him dead. The immortal body belongs to me. All of a sudden, Yin demon ancestor went crazy. What was the purpose of his painstaking research for 50 years? It was still for the immortal body. Previously, he had lost the motivation to search for the immortal body. It was not that he did not care, but because he had not found it, and his body and mind were exhausted. But now, the immortal body was right in front of him. Anyone who tried to stop him would die. His eyes turning bloodshot, Yin demon ancestor flew toward the center of the mountain range with his fastest speed. Kacha! The stone shattered, and the golden scroll reappeared in the world. It's not a physical object, but an energy body. Yi Chen used his eyesight and discovered that the golden scroll was not a real scroll, but a construct of golden energy. The words on it were faintly discernible, emitting a rhythmic undulation. The golden scroll paused for a moment, then suddenly exploded. Boundless golden light rushed toward Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing. At that moment, the two even felt that time had stopped, and they could not sense anything. They could not think of anything, and the only thing left was the golden light that filled their vision. Puff! Suddenly, Murong Qingqing spurted out a mouthful of blood and was blown away by the golden light. Yi Chen, on the other hand, did not receive any injuries, and was drowned in the dazzling light. The requirement of the golden scroll on the soul is higher than low-grade profound martial skills. No wonder. Murong Qingqing looked pensive. She more or less understood that it was not the golden light that repelled her. In fact, she had been eliminated, and her soul quality was not enough. The golden light gradually converged, forming a golden light ball. Yi Chen was in the middle of the golden light ball, and his emotionless pupils turned golden. If one observed carefully, one could see that there were many strange characters in his pupils. These characters were too small, and were constantly rearranging themselves. The moment the light ball was formed, Yi Chen had already recovered his ability to think. He was startled, and only checked his mind after realizing his current situation. It is indeed the undying body. And it is the undying body scroll. The cultivation secrets of the undying body contained too many characters. The first ones that were arranged correctly were the ones at the front. After they were arranged, Yi Qin could finally confirm that the golden scroll was indeed recording the undying body. However, the undying body seemed to have been separated into two scrolls, and he had only obtained the first one. As for whether there was a second scroll or not, it was still unknown. Soon, the characters were also arranged properly. The undying body scroll has 3 levels. The first level is flesh healing. Any wounds without any defects can be healed in an instant. The so-called wounds without defects were wounds that did not harm the foundation. For example, a cut on the body would be considered as wounds without any defects. However, if an arm or a leg was broken, it would not be without defects, but the foundation would be damaged. The first level would not be able to heal the foundation. The second level is limb regrowth. Severed head, severed arm, and legs can be healed in an instant, but it consumes life yuan qi. The more serious the foundation is, the more life yuan qi it consumes. If the life yuan qi is insufficient, it will not be able to heal completely. Once the life yuan qi is exhausted, limb regrowth will lose its effect. Limb regrowth didn't need to be mentioned. As long as one wasn't crushed into meat paste or split into too many pieces, one could recover. However, limb regrowth was different from flesh healing, as it consumed life yuan qi. What was life yuan qi? It was a person's innate yuan qi. Under normal circumstances, life yuan qi was very difficult to increase, and the gap between qi realm and astral reaching realm was not that big. However, from the astral reaching realm to the sea of soul realm, life yuan qi would suddenly increase by several folds. After all, after reaching the sea of soul realm, one's body would no longer be an ordinary body, and life yuan qi would naturally be incomparably powerful. The third level is flesh regeneration. A piece of flesh can be regenerated, but it consumes a huge amount of life yuan qi. Without enough life yuan qi, the regenerated body will be in a weak state, and the degree of weakness will depend on the amount of life yuan qi. The life and death realm undying body had a total of 3 levels. The first was limb regrowth, the second was flesh regeneration, and the third was blood rebirth. The undying body recorded on the golden scroll also had 3 levels. The first was flesh healing, the second was limb regrowth, and the third was flesh regeneration. In other words, the second and third levels were the same as the first and second levels of the life and death realm. If nothing unexpected happened, the realm of blood rebirth should be recorded in the second volume of the undying body. Unfortunately, there were no more characters here. Although flesh healing is not as good as limb regrowth, it's very important for me right now, and it's also relatively easy to learn. Although Yi Qin had the 3,000 years old blood sun flower and the greater half of the heavenly demonic flower, recovering from serious injuries would still require a lot of time. If he could successfully cultivate flesh healing, he would be able to recover to his peak state in an instant, and he wouldn't need to consume life yuan qi at all. Just think about it, in a life and death battle, the opponent would be riddled with scars while you were still in your peak state. The final result was self-evident. The golden sphere suddenly shrunk into a golden pellet and entered Yi Qin's sea of soul between his eyebrows. Yi Qin regained control of his body. At this moment, a figure entered the valley at lightning speed and saw Yi Qin and Murong Qingcheng. He also saw the undying altar, undying cliff, and the statues on the cliff. The newcomer was precisely Yin demon ancestor. Kid, let me ask you, where is the secret art of undying body? Without any superfluous words, a cold killing intent flickered on Yin demon ancestor's face as he unblinkingly stared at Yi Qin. Yi Qin knew that whatever he said would be useless, so he indifferently said, no comment. Hee, seems like you've obtained it. Hand it over, or die. Yin demon ancestor didn't put Yi Qin in his eyes in the slightest. Under the condition of losing his Jin Yuan, he might be apprehensive of Yi Qin. But at this moment, the latter was no different from an ordinary Sea of Soul realm expert in his eyes. He could kill him with a flip of his hand. Yi Qin indifferently smiled, perhaps you won't have the chance. Swish. As his voice faded, Yichen jumped onto the undying altar. Murong Qingcheng received his message and climbed up almost at the same time. What do you think you're doing? Yin Demon Ancestor had a bad premonition. He furiously roared and slashed at Yichen and Murong Qingcheng on the altar. Rumble. The blade light bounced off, and the light of the undying altar protected the two within. Do you think you can hide inside forever? Yin Demon Ancestor's aura soared. He extended his right hand, wanting to flip the undying altar. I said, you won't have the chance. Using some unknown method, Yichen activated the huge undying altar, turning it into a beam of white light and fleeing into the distance. Yin Demon Ancestor's face turned ashen as he crazily chased after. Chapter 440. The undying altar's speed was unimaginably fast. It gave off the impression that it was leaping through the void. Each leap covered a distance of over 10 kilometers, and after 3 or 4 leaps, it was already over 50 kilometers away. In the end, it was only an illusory white dot. Yin Demon Ancestor was worthy of being a master-level expert. His entire body was shrouded in an indistinct gray whirlwind as he chased after it. Stay here. Following Yin Demon Ancestor's roar, the space around the undying altar violently fluctuated, and the cosmos reversed. At the same time, a huge earthen yellow hand descended, wanting to grab the altar. Pop! The huge earthen yellow hand split open, and the undying altar broke out of the encirclement. Soon after, it disappeared into the void, completely disappearing from Yin Demon Ancestor's perception. A sawtooth blade light flickered, almost splitting the space apart. Unfortunately, it was a step slower. Yin Demon Ancestor's complexion turned unsightly as he halted. Although he knew that the undying altar was extraordinary, he didn't expect it to be able to escape into the void. No matter how powerful he was, as long as he couldn't tear open the space, he wouldn't be able to catch up. When I, Yin Demon Ancestor, leave, it will be your death, unless you can cultivate the undying body in a short time. Yin Demon Ancestor wasn't clear on how difficult it was to cultivate the undying body, but compared to the undying body of a life and death king, one could imagine its difficulty. It should be known that entering the realm of life and death was not an easy matter, as difficult as ascending to the heavens. In the history of true spirit continent, the highest number of life and death kings in 100 years was merely 14, and the lowest was merely 8. Therefore, even if there were shortcuts, it would be impossible for Yichen to cultivate the undying body in a short time. Even 5 or 10 years might not be enough. White rays of light interweaved into a thin defensive layer, isolating the berserk spatial power outside. Occasionally, the density of the spatial power would increase a bit, and the undying altar would tremble a bit. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel like it was shuttling through the void. Standing on the vast undying altar, Yichen looked outside through the defensive layer. There were no objects in the outside world, only flowing colors. Because the colors were too dense, it was impossible to tell how many colors there were. Some that had been seen before, some that had not. These colors seemed to be liquid yet not liquid, gas yet not gas, solid yet not solid. They seemed to be very close, but they could not be touched at all. This is the power of space. Yichen suddenly thought of the void-shattering finger art. As a profound martial art, the void-shattering finger art required the space profound to activate, which was one of the most incredible profound out of all of the profound martial arts. The number of people who had mastered it could be counted on one hand. Therefore, even though he had obtained the third movement of the void-shattering finger art for many years, Yichen had never been able to make any progress, and had been stuck at the superficial level. Puff! After a moment of hesitation, Yichen flicked his finger. The invisible finger force passed through the defensive layer without any obstruction and came into contact with the power of space. A miraculous scene happened. Within the flowing space power, a spiral-shaped ripple appeared. It was about 10 meters long and 3 inches in diameter. Of course, this was just a visual observation. As for its true length and width, Yichen had no idea. He was currently sensing the connection between the space power and the void-shattering finger art. Space mentality. Seeing this scene, Murong Qingqing's beautiful eyes revealed an astonished expression. True Spirit Continent had a saying that time reigns supreme and space reigns supreme. The meaning of this saying was that time reigns supreme among all profound mysteries. If time didn't reign supreme, then space would reign supreme. The reason why Xianhou was so powerful was because she had grasped the space profound. Among life and death kings, her strength was second only to Su King, and she was equally famous as the Evil King and Dragon King. However, this was the ranking of True Spirit Continent. Outside of True Spirit Continent, there was still the boundless ocean. Nobody knew what kind of terrifying characters were there. In any case, all kings were apprehensive of the boundless ocean. Puff! 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 Yichen repeatedly used the void-shattering finger art. The defensive layer of interweaving white light didn't obstruct the energy flowing out, allowing Yichen's finger force to have 100% effect on the space power. As the number of times increased, Yichen's comprehension of the space mentality deepened. Space was like a great furnace. Besides time, everything else was its fuel. Grasping the concept of space was like gradually understanding this great furnace. When the concept of space reached its limit, it would approach the essence of space and enter the realm of profound meaning. But, the profound meaning of space was even more mysterious than the concept of space. The concept of space was to understand the great furnace, and the profound meaning of space was to grasp it. Grasping the great furnace was the same as grasping all living things. Faintly closing his eyes, Yichen extended his right hand, raised his index finger, and held his breath, seemingly condensing an incorporeal power. The undying altar shuttled back and forth at a rapid speed without any fluctuations. Standing on top of it, Yichen and Murong Qingqing had different expressions. One was motionless like a statue, while the other was gazing at the other with an unfathomable black light flickering in her eyes. Buzz! All of a sudden, Yichen opened his eyes, and his index finger pointed out without any trace. Outside the defensive layer of the undying altar, a splash appeared on the space power. Then, a spiral-shaped ripple spread out at an extreme speed. 10 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters, 25 meters. This time, Yichen broke all the previous records. For the first time, the spiral-shaped ripple broke through 20 meters and reached 25 meters. Huff! Letting out a breath, Yichen felt very tired. This finger attack didn't consume a lot of Zhen Yuan, but the amount of essence, qi, and soul it consumed was beyond his imagination. If he used another finger attack, he might really fall to the ground. Void-shattering finger's third movement. I've finally comprehended 10% of it. However, 10% of the void-shattering finger's power is even greater than the sky thunder cut. The space mentality is definitely several times more powerful than most mentalities. Unfortunately, 2 fingers is my limit. Unless it's a life or death situation, I can only use 1 finger. If 1 finger couldn't kill someone, he could still escape. If 2 fingers couldn't kill someone, then he wouldn't even be able to run. Therefore, from the current situation, void-shattering finger was a double-edged sword. If used well, it could become a life or death ace attack. If not used well, then he would lose his own life. Murong Qingqing couldn't tell how powerful void-shattering finger was. Time and space could never be judged by appearance. Although it looked ordinary, it was actually a fatal attack. However, void-shattering finger, which was powered by the space mentality, shouldn't be too bad. It might be another powerful ace attack. Thunder region, it was the region with the richest thunder yuan qi. It wasn't as big as Misty Snow region, and was considered medium in the southern sector. However, it was the strongest region in the southern sector, and had the most powerful warriors and geniuses, as well as the most sections. Thunder region had 4 great danger zones, and one of them was called Thunder Cry Grave. Thunder Cry Grave sounded like a graveyard, but it wasn't actually a graveyard as people understood it to be. From another perspective, it was a graveyard of thunder and lightning. Thunder Cry Grave was extremely vast, spanning 33,000 li from south to north, and 28,000 li from east to west. Due to the abnormal magnetic field, the air and underground of Thunder Cry Grave was filled with lightning, visible to the naked eye. Therefore, it was called Thunder Cry Grave. Every year, many people would come to explore Thunder Cry Grave, and the majority of the explorers' physiques were inclined towards Thunder attribute. Here, they could obtain Thunder attribute herbs, ores, and treasures, or even comprehend the Thunder mentality. It was also a pretty good choice. Old 6, do you feel that the lightning around us has become even more berserk? At the edge of Thunder Cry Grave's core zone, an astral reaching expert said to his companion. The middle-aged man called Old 6 revealed an astonished expression. I thought I was the only one who had this feeling. Did you feel it too? That's right. In the past, the lightning's frequency wasn't this fast. I think we'd better leave this place. Thunder Cry Grave is known as a graveyard of thunder and lightning, but the number of people who died inside is also not small. You're right. Let's leave. The two's figures flashed, urging their Jin Yuan and rapidly flying towards the periphery. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Crackle, crackle, crackle. As the two had expected, the lightning's frequency was getting higher and higher. In just a few blinks of an eye, the frequency had doubled. After a quarter of an hour, the entire area was shrouded in lightning. A glaring radiance burst out ferociously like a blazing white sun. Rumble. The ground within several hundred li suddenly shook. At the center of the lightning explosion, a huge object broke out of the ground and rushed into the sky. It was wrapped in endless lightning, dragging a lightning flame tail behind it. Look, there's a lightning ball shooting out. The abnormality could be seen from thousands of li away. When the huge object rushed into the sky, it looked like a lightning ball with lightning coiling around it. When the huge object reached a height of 10,000 meters, its power disappeared and it fell down. The lightning it brought along collided with other lightning bolts, creating layers of explosions. Finally, the huge object steadily landed on the flat ground, and the lightning was dissipating. Finally, when all the lightning had dissipated, the huge object could be seen clearly. It was a 400 meters wide and 100 meters tall six-pillared altar. In the center of the altar stood two people, one male and one female. The male was dressed in blue and had a long sword hanging from his waist. He looked delicate and handsome. The female was dressed in a purple dress and had a light veil covering her face. Her black hair was like a waterfall, and her eyes were like cold stars. These two were indeed Yi Chen and Murong Qingcheng. They had been brought out of the underground world by the undying altar and came to the surface world. However, they did not know where exactly they were. Pop! The white light interweaved into a defensive layer, and the two walked out. Swish! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning appeared beside them, striking the ground and cracking it. Murong Qingcheng muttered, if I'm not wrong, this should be the Thunder region. Only the Thunder region's Thunder Yuan Qi is this rich. Thunder region. Yi Chen smiled bitterly. The place of extreme negative energy was several million li away from the Thunder region. As for the strongest region in the southern sector, Yi Chen had long heard of it. To him, even if he did not come this time, he would come again in the future. So, it did not matter. The ground trembled slightly. Yi Chen turned around and saw the undying altar gradually sinking into the ground until it disappeared. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.